Right, good morning. So we're up to Reish Tzadi Aleph Seif Gimel, working through the halachas of Shlishis, third meal on Shabbos. Says the Mechaber, "In nimshecha Seudas haboker ad shehigia zman hamincha." So Shabbos lunch, your second meal, is extending through to the time of mincha. Yafsik hasuda, you should stop. Vivarich birchas hamazon, and then bench. And then you can wash again and make hamaitzi and have your third meal. For nochen hadavar, and that's the correct thing to do. Shem lo ha'osakein, because if you didn't do that, if you're going to just continue eating your main meal, the lunch meal, and then by the time you finish and you want to eat a third meal, it's going to be an achila gasa. So it's good to be mafsik the second meal, bench, and then start again. We'll see halacha l'maisa in a second. Says the Ramah, Haggah, but if you know that there is time to have Shlishis after you've davened mincha with a minyan, lo yaseh Seudas Shlishis koydem mincha miu im also yatsa. It's preferable to daven mincha first, like we said yesterday. Miu, says the Ramah, im also yatsa. If you went and had Shlishis before mincha, then you are yotze. So let's have a look. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sifkat Yudalet. Vivarich birchas hamazon. For kosva achronim, and I think this is what you were troubled by. For kosva achronim she'ach kach yochem v'yelech ma'at ben time. Don't just bench and then wash straight away and have the third meal. You should wait a little bit in between. But if you just sit in your place and they just carry on, they're not yetzer. Achas. So the Mishnah Berurah is explaining that the achronim say that you should wait a little bit in between. Now we have that, and we'll talk about it. It comes later in the Simon. When Shabbos is Erev Pesach, so then you've got a real problem because you've got to have Shlishis by Seis Manachila, because if you want to have Lechem Mishnah, which we'll talk about soon, so then and I could even this year. I think this year is this year's Erev Pesach is Shabbos, no? So okay, so Mr. we'll get there. So then you've got a problem because you want to have Shlishis ideally with Lechem, with the Lechem Mishnah, and you can't have Matzah on Erev Pesach. So then you've got to try and fit in 2 meals in the day before Seis Manachila. So everyone davens early. So then you have your first Suda, it's quite quick, and then you go for you learn 15 minutes, or you go for a walk around the block, and then so that's what he's saying. You should yelech ma'at ben time. Yokem v'yelech ma'at ben time. You have a little gap in between. That's what he means. But those who just sit there in their place, they haven't been yotze their chiyuv of Shlishis to have a kusud achas, because effectively it's one meal, and even if they bench and they wash again, then if they're staying in situ there, then they haven't really. It's really sudachas. For kosar b'is Yosef, the loyidish barab nasas kain lehefsik sudasan. There shouldn't be a public drasha to be mafsik the suda, because kimin shekodim chatzois in rishoyin lahafsik. Because we said yesterday that if it's before chatzois, they shouldn't really be mafsik with the drasha. Ein hakol b'kim, and people will come to get confused. Then they'll delay their first meal until after chatzois, and we don't want to do that. And the concern is that if he continues with his Seudas, with his lunch meal, then anything eaten afterwards is going to be an achila gasa. Says Mishnah Berurah Tesvav, he calls man ha'achila ha'stumcha is pesucha, which I think means the food pipes are open, or the stomach I think is open. Masha'enkein acha hasuda, but once the meal finishes, then it closes and you start digesting. We're not worried about bracha she'en tzricha. The reason why you're doing it is for halachic purposes, i.e. you should have a proper Shlishis, i.e. you should wash and bench. And that's what the Ramah is going on. I.e. the Ramah is saying that to avoid a possible problem of a bracha she'en tzricha, bench, then go daven mincha, have a proper gap, and then come back. It's all about planning and okay, Avol Mishi Yedea, says the Mishnah Berurah Tez Zayin, Avol Mishi Yedea Hainu, Shemeshaer Benafshay, Shelotia Ozachilos Achilagasa. He can estimate that it's not an Achilagasa, so then there shouldn't be an Achilagasa. What should he do? To avoid an Achilagasa, he should, that's what is going on in the Ramah. He should bench, go daven mincha, and then come back and have Shlishis. Even in a situation where Yontif is going to be on a Sunday, B'sof hayom kanog, and therefore he can't really, where Yontov's on a Sunday, he can't really have a big Shalosh Seudas later on Shabbos afternoon, because he should avoid having a large meal on Erev Yontov, K'mo Erev Shabbos, like he should avoid having one on Erev Shabbos. Mikol Makom im Yodea sheyuchel oz lechel al kol panim k'shir beitza v'yosef. You can have a small amount, the share of a beitza or slightly more. V'chanal b'sifar, like we said previously, lo yechalik suda shachris l'shtayim. Then he shouldn't split his lunch meal into two. To hayeshoimim the osalasas came mishum brachas in esricha, because just arbitrarily splitting your lunch meal into two, benching and then washing again, that's a brachas in esricha. Kalsav Mogan Avram b'Shem Sefer Chasidim. Mishi yesh lemozen shtei Seudas mitzum somis. If a person has only got enough food for two exact meals, v'im yechal came the shalosh Seudas, and if he divides the food he has into 3 meals, lo yelo kol suda l'sova. Each meal will be he won't be eat to satisfaction, to satiation. Mutar sheyochel shtei Seudas l'sova. Better to have 2 meals where you're going to be full rather than 3 meals where you won't be. Umikol makom. But if the morning meal prolongs till after chatzos, that you should split into 2. Like we're saying over here, because yes, you'll be a bit hungry after your lunch meal, but very soon afterwards you're going to be eating your Shalosh Seudas, which will bring you to satiation. But you should not push off the first meal until that late time, until after chatzos, because you're being mevatel the mitzvah of Einik Shabbos by delaying it that long. Okay. Sif Dalet. Ein tzorech lekadish besuda Shlishis. Very interesting halacha. Does anybody here do it? Does anyone drink wine or have kiddush at Shalosh Seudas? You've seen it. Yeah, people do it. So here, this is the makar. Says the halacha, ein tzorech lekadish besuda Shlishis. You don't need to make kiddush on the Shalosh Seudas. Avol tzorech liftzoya al shtei kikaris. But you do need to have lechem mishnah. Says the Ramah, ve'im soyed harbe pa'amim b'Shabbos. And if you eat, and if you have more than 3 meals on Shabbos, you have more than a 4th or a 5th meal, tzarich the kol suda shtei kikaris. You need to have lechem mishnah at each meal. Now that could happen, sometimes in the summer, the long summer Shabbos, that you go to an early minyan and I wash at Kiddush, and then you have lunch, and then you can later on at 6, 7, 8 o'clock. And here in London, it can be it can be later even. Then you want to you're hungry again, and you want to have some bread. You need lechem mishnah. Really, you should have lechem mishnah every time you wash on Shabbos. And if minimally, well, we'll see soon, but there are further minimals. But you should, if you can't have lechem mishnah at Shabbos, at least have 1 loaf, kikah shalem, says the Ramah. That's why it's sort of spread. The minhag is to have at least one complete challah, loaf or something at Shalosh Seudas. And I think that's what the Olim try and do, to have, of course, lechem mishnah even at Shalosh Seudas. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ein tzorech lekadish. Now, dahainu levorach al hayayin koydem hasuda. That means to make kiddush on wine before the Shalosh Seudas, before the meal. Why is that? Why don't you have to? We compare night and day for Kiddush. Ma laila sagi b'chad zimna. Just like at night time, we only made Kiddush once. Af b'yom k'shetignu chachom lekadish sagi nami b'chad zimna b'boiker. We also chazal musakin. You make Kiddush once. That is on Shabbos morning. Avol shtei kikar sorach. But when it comes to lechem mishnah, you need to have 2 loaves, even at Shalosh Seudas. Why? But all the Shabbos meals, in that respect, are equal. So no need to have kiddush at Shalosh Seudas, but lechem mishnah yes. Pachas mikika echad, says the Mishnah Berurah, that you should, even if you can't have lechem mishnah at Shalosh Seudas, you should at least have 1 complete loaf of bread, 1 challah. Now why is that? Very interesting cheshbon here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkat Nutes, to be yom shishi yarad hamon lekol echad shnei amorim and mikol omer also shtei kikaris. Because every day the mon fell 2 amorim, and each omer is shtei kikaris. Sahari abal shnei amorim. So you got 4 loaves that fell on a Friday. Now, what are you going to do with these 4 loaves when you're in the midbar? Achal echad be'erev Shabbos. 1 is for Friday lunch. It fell early Friday morning. So 1 is for the Suda on Friday day. For echad be'el Shabbos, and the second one will be used for Friday night. Ve'echad b'boker, one is for Shabbos lunch. Harinisha loy rak echad shalim l'Seudas Shlishis. So therefore, if you can't have two lechem mishnah for Shlishis, says the Ramah, at least have one complete one, because actually that's what they would have in the midbar. They would 4 loaves would fall, as it were, on Friday morning. One would be Friday lunch, one is Friday night, one is Shabbos lunch, and then one would be for Shlishis. You have one over shalim, and it should be shalim. V'im ein lo, and if you haven't got any challah or bread or whatever left over, daiba prusa shiba kabetza. So at least have a slice of bread which is a kabetza. V'chanal b'sif aleph. The afagav the mitzvah lechem mishnah. Even though you haven't got the mitzvah of lechem mishnah, mitzvah Seudas miyakayim. You have kept the mitzvah of a suda, and that is with a kabetza of bread. Okay, likach shnaim. But the minhag is, concluded the Ramah, that you should be machmir to have 2 loaves. V'chein roi l'nohig lechatchila. And that's what you should try and aim for lechatchila. Ki asvara rishona hi ha'ika. I.e. that we equate all the Shabbos meals, and just like on Friday night and Shabbos morning you need lechem mishnah, so too for your 3rd Shabbos meal you should try and have lechem mishnah. V'tov lahada levorech al hayayin toich hasuda. True, you don't need to make kiddush because we equate day and night, and just like at night it's 1 kiddush, so to a day it's 1 kiddush. But you should try and have a bit of wine during Shlishis. Actually, let's just look at the footnote on that now. If you look at footnote 19, this is very interesting. Well, what is the source for that? To have wine at Shlishis? Makar hadin hu b'Rambam v'shekosav v'tzorich likver kol suda mishloshtan al hayayin. So the Rambam says very clearly that you should have wine in each of the 3 meals. Because of our case of Mishnah, she'ein hakavana she'kadish gam b'Seudas Shlishis. Not that you should make kiddush at Seudas Shlishis, and sheyishte yain b'toich suda. So you should just drink a little bit of wine during the 3rd meal. V'chein bia hamishnah bura lekamon shechiyuvahu be'emetz hasuda. It means that to have wine during the meal, not before it. U'b'shtei hasudas harishonos hachiyuv hu zeh hu milvad hayayin shekadish lov. So in addition to making kiddush on Friday night and Shabbos morning, there's also an inyan to have wine during the meal on Friday night and Shabbos morning, and therefore it's that chiyuv which is Shlishis. I don't see people do that so much. Your father does it?
That's grape juice for Shlishis.
Really, grape juice?
Grape juice and fish. Grape
juice and fish, interesting. Okay, there you go. To have wine? Well, they drink wine, Dafka?
It makes a bracha.
Really? Okay, well, this is the Makar, yeah, and it's based on this Rambam. It seems very clear in the Rambam. And the Mishnah Berurah says as well that you should have yain. It's good to have wine during Shlishis. Now, how much wine do you have to have? So if you look at the next paragraph in 19, V'shiur shtias yain besuda das haragon Reb Nissim Karelitz shehu afilu pachas michdei revius. It's not a din of kiddush. Therefore, you don't have a whole revius. You can have even less than that. V'afil tzarich kais sheyesh berevius. You don't even have to have a kais which holds a revius. Mishum sherak bizman hagemara sheika hashtia besuda hayir ala yain. Because in times of Gemara, that's what they would drink during the meal. Back in the day, they would drink wine. That would be the chashivas to have a revius of wine. But nowadays we're doing it just really is just as to be machshav the suda. Even a small amount is okay. All right, let's go back to Mishnah Berurah. Second line after the Sif Chaf Aleph. If every single participant of the meal hasn't got lechem mishnah, which is what we often do, that the person making hamotzi should have in mind the chiyuv of lechem mishnah for everybody. That's how we do it. So they should have in mind with his bracha, Good. Okay. Hey. Now, what do you need to eat at Shlishis? So you need to have it with bread, and we said previously that ideally you should have it with lechem mishnah, or at least the kikar shalim. As long as you have mezonos, that's sufficient. The things which normally accompany bread, i.e. bebasa v'dagim. Avuleba peris, but not fruit. And that you can even use fruit. So that's the hierarchy. Lechem mishnah, 1 kikar, 1 prusa, 1 slice of bread, mezonos, basa v'dagim, and then peris. Or Svara Rishona Ika Shetzorach Lasos B'Pas. But the Svara Rishona to make it on bread is preferred. Elim Kain Sover B'Yos, unless the person is very full, and then you can have the other alternatives. Says the Ramah, but Malcolm She'esh Lechel Pas, and if in a situation you cannot eat bread, it's impossible to eat bread, Kagain Be'erev Pesach Shechol Yos B'Shabbos She'also Lechel Pas La'achar Mincha, because the Lekavan Pinchas Pas, you can't eat matzah. At that point, then so check out, we'll see what Mishnah Berurah says. Then check out Hilchos Pesach, and Hashem will get there for this year. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chof Beis, Sorach Lasos B'Pas, Kim Dialfin and Sholosh Seudas Misholosh Pa'am Hayoim T'chsivi Gavimon. When we started off with that it says Hayoim 3 times, and therefore Sorach Lasos B'Pas, you should really try and have all 3 meals with bread. And to have other nice things at Shalosh Seudas according to your ability, your financial ability. You can make it with anything. Again, like we said, the idea is to have lechem mishnah ideally. And the question is, b'di'evet. Now it's interesting, if you look at 20, b'di'evet, kashe'en lo pas, kosav lekamon, if you haven't got bread, then fish and meat are more preferred than just having fruit. So then the next thing would have mezonos. Because there's no mitzvah to eat it b'tei oven, and therefore if you can get away with mezonos. Sagi b'hochi, it's sufficient to have this. V'zeu gam kein tam shar hadeh shemikilim b'zeh. That's why some people say, okay, to have fruit, or okay, to have fish, or whatever it is. She'also like al kein yikayim oisa b'minei tigun she'osim b'matzah kasusha kabasa b'dogim aperis. And therefore, on Erev Pesach, to have either to have fish or meat or fruit or things like that. Okay, 2 interesting ha'aras. 22. B'biyad dvar, when it says that you don't have to have lechem mishnah if you're very full. Generally speaking, a person has 2 meals a day. Normally to have it with bread. But the third meal you're having on Shabbos is al kavod Shabbos, which are in addition to the regular 2 meals which a normal person has every day. And therefore, mezonos would suffice if you can't manage bread. Okay, and then 24, this talks about Erev Pesach. L'kaman kosav in Tov Mem Daled, shetoiv gamkein lechalek is hasudas shachris l'shtayim, v'lechel sudas Shlishis ba'boiker. And that's what we'll please God encounter, that you try and get your Shalosh Seudas in before Sosman Achila, this on Shabbos Erev Pesach. V'kosav shedas hagan, shenochen lasas kein. That's what you should try and do, and not be semich on the heter to have fruit or meat or fish, for Shalosh Seudas later in the day. As long as you can make a proper break between the Seudas, otherwise if you just eat the first meal, then you wash, you bench, and then you wash again, it's a bracha she'en tzricha. And even in the third meal, you got to be careful not to overdo it, to make sure you eat matzah in the night. Okay, lastly, just to finish off, Sif Vov, Noshim chayoves besuda Shlishis. Women are obligated in Seudas Shlishis, says the Mishnah Berurah. D'lakol mili b'Shabbos ish v'isha shovin. Men and women are exactly the same when it comes to Shabbos. And therefore, just like men are mechuyev in Shalosh Seudas, so too women as well. V'oid shegam heim hoyu b'nei shalamon. In addition, they're also included in the mitzvah of Mon, in the miracle of Mon. When it says achlu hayom about the Mon, women were addressed as well. The Mizen Nilmad Chi of Shalosh Seudas b'Shabbos, that's the Makar for Shalosh Seudas. And the Bir Halacha says Noshim Chayovas v'Gam Chayovas b'Mitzvahs Lechem Mishnah, all the details of it, i.e. even Lechem Mishnah as well. So just to summarize, what have we said today? That although there's no mitzvah of Kiddush at Shalosh Seudas, because we equate night meal and day meal, and there's just like there's one mitzvah of Kiddush at night, there's one mitzvah of Kiddush at day, and therefore there's no mitzvah of Kiddush. However, there is an inyan or a tov lahada to have yayin at Shalosh Seudas, and indeed all the meals. However, there is in terms of what to eat, then preferably you should have lechem mishnah for Shalosh Seudas. If not, the next thing down is one kicker shalim. If not, then mezonos. If not, then boss of a dogim, and then lastly Paris. Okay, and noshim achayovs besuda shlishis as well. Say them.